Hello everybody, Scott Golden here with the Golden Opportunities Coaching and Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channels. Obviously this is the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel. We've got over 2,400 of these available for your listening pleasure. This is the benefit of the 12th of October edition of the program and 1991. And again, this is the October 12th, 1991 edition of WCW Saturday Night. We continue to go through these. I enjoy them because it's my first time running through the various WCW 91 editions. And to be fair, WCW 90-91, which I'm back to 89 in my watching, preparing to record these. WCW during this time period better than a lot of the wrestling on today by far. Just enjoyable stuff that, for the most part, you can have some fun with. Brian Pillman and the six-man tag team champs Big Josh defeat Thomas Rich and Terrence Taylor with Alexander York 11-20. Pillman pinned Rich with a crossbody off the top rope after Josh hits the double clothesline on both opponents. Not really a bad match per se, although Brian Pillman and Big Josh, six-man tag team titles, I don't really know a lot about in terms of the WCW version of it. Most notable version is the world-class version. But Brian Pillman coming in with a couple of drop kicks, arm drags, and the like. Pillman in pretty solid control. Pillman only national exposure a couple of years in at this point. Big Josh, also known as Doink the Clown later, and Matt Bourne in earlier definition. Thomas Rich and Terrence Taylor, members of the York Foundation. Big Josh tries to square off with Taylor, a bit more of a brawl. Brian Pillman, the flash of the bunch, and at this point, 1991, Pillman, they were looking at as I don't know that I'd say major star, but the thought was that he could have some longevity to him and all of that. Thomas Rich tries to take Big Josh down, and they manage to get a bit of a cutoff there. Josh manages to get a kind of a bit of a go behind here. Really basic stuff along the way. Brawl to the outside. Alexander York, a.k.a. Terry Reynolds, a.k.a. Terry, from WWF fame. At the time, I wonder about the personal relationship between her and Pillman before the Dustin Rhodes relationship. I don't know if this is the time that it existed, but it was there. Anyway, good roll-up by Brian Pillman, and he almost gets a victory, but the referee out of position there. Match runs in total about 11, 12 minutes, something like that. Worth going anyway to see if you like basic tag psychology that has some simplicity to it, but also some forward motion to it. Hard shots by Pillman as he takes hard shots as he continues to get under control. Pillman still trying to get some leverage back in keeping things going in his proper direction. Pillman manages to hit a drop kick and get a victory for his team. They do the top 10 WCW series. There's also a control center here for Halloween Havoc, talking about Dusty Rhodes managing to endorse Ron Simmons, which at the time, really basic deal here as the endorsing of Dusty Rhodes, a former NWA/WCW champion, is a pretty big thing for Ron Simmons. Ron Simmons and Lex Luger coming up as the main event of Halloween Havoc 1991. Johnny B. Bad out here next. Johnny B. Bad, not exactly a guy that I don't know that you really look at as a future for your promotion at the time, but doing the Little Richard knockoff, and WCW obviously doing some degree of, I don't even know, maybe you'd say simplicity for the sake of simplicity, gimmicks for the sake of gimmicks, but Johnny B. Bad defeats John Faulkner. Obviously a one-sided squash match here. Doesn't need to be anything other than that. Teddy Long and Teddy Long being the manager at the time, I think is just trying to get some credibility. Also, Johnny B. Bad, Pink Feather Boa, keeping things going in a positive direction, and Bad hits the high knee, along with other basic stuff, and Bad trying to get a victory as quickly as he can. Nothing necessarily out of alignment there. We then see Johnny B. Bad with the kiss that don't miss, big punch, and a victory here. Steve Austin out next, starting Steve Austin squash match for himself here as well, facing off against, I believe Firebreaker Chip is the opponent for the day. Television title on the line, WCW television title, pretty big deal here at the time, and manages to get things going. Voice of Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes going to feud with Steve Austin for several years going forward here, which is kind of cool if you think about where both of those guys go as major forces in the business. Rhodes still around all these 30 years later. Anyway, we continue to kind of go in that direction. Again, Steve Austin defeating Todd Champion with Firebreaker Chip. Austin still looking, I wouldn't say the best, but at his best at the time. Lots of good selling, lots of back and forth. Austin takes his man down, takes him down on the mat pretty simply. Austin also does some great selling, and Lady Blossom up. They go a couple of minutes here. Pretty basic. Dustin Rhodes runs in after Austin tries to cheat to win. The run-in is really basic. Dustin looking like he's going to blast Lady Blossom, which wouldn't have been good for business, but Dustin Rhodes hits a bulldog on Austin, and they basically are launching their television championship feud. Steve Austin rolls out with the victory and ultimately trying to hold on to being the television champion for a little while longer. Good run at the time for Steve Austin. Austin then was handed the ability to cheat going forward. Anyway, we then see a match with the Young Pistols here. Enhancement match for them. Young Pistols, who eventually become heels, as we've talked about over the course of this going forward. But here, I think there's still baby faces here in the October 1991 edition. This is a enhancement match where Scott Armstrong and Tracy Smothers basically in shoot interviews has said he felt like a extension of the family, as it were. Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong defeating the U.S. Tag Team Champions, defeating Bob Cook and Mike Thor, the Todd Champion thing, the match before, and my notes got a little blended there. Anyway, Tracy Smothers, Steve Armstrong getting some good, roll-arounds, getting extra reps in. Not exactly the most athletically pleasing match you're ever going to see, just in a very one-sided squash. Bob Cook, though, Florida area guy who has a lot of potential to him, basic shots and a couple of Irish whips, hits the shots, and Tracy Smothers manages to get where he can and ultimately hits a couple of shots there. Leaping back elbow, almost like a elevated heart attack, and the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys manage to get a victory here. They're making signs that they want the championships. Then we go to another in the series of interviews. Harley Race basically promising that Lex Luger is going to continue to be a major force. Also Van Hammer with a Van Hammer music video that doesn't exactly look the greatest, but it's there. Harley Race basically implies that Ron Simmons needs to get real about his prospects. He's not going to defeat Lex Luger. Race, obviously, here a pretty major force, as it were, and manages to get things going in a positive direction for himself here. We continue the review in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. We'll be back in 2 seconds. I gotta grab my phone, and we will be right back right after this. And again, more continuation of, decent stuff. I mean, WCW 1991 is a lot of fun if you're willing to look at it from the standpoint that it's meant to be fun. We then go to the Harley race promo. Basically, he says Lex Luger's the greatest athlete in the world today. Hypes that Ron Simmons needs to know his place. Rip Rogers and Bobby Eaton are out here. Bobby Eaton ultimately hits a couple of punches, and Rip Rogers, who becomes one of the best trainers in the last 20, 25 years. Major deal there. Bobby Eaton manages to hit a spinning neckbreaker and the Alabama Jam. Eaton, to think about it, to have the World Championship shot at the beginning of the year, and now kind of just lost Alabama Jam by Bobby Eaton. And I think at this point the Midnight Express is done and over for the time being. Then we move to another in the series of enhancement matches. Bill Kasmarin gets a quick victory. He gets jumped from behind by Cactus Jack. Of course, Cactus Jack still kind of looking for something to do. Certainly, Bill Kasmarin not exactly where he wants to be in terms of pecking order. But Cactus comes in, gets a couple of shots there. Sting runs in and makes a save for Kasmarin there. Kind of hyping the run here. We go to the next in the long-term series of things there. Bill Kasmarin defeating Abdullah the Butcher via disqualification 155. Cactus Jack interferes after Kasmarin hit the body slam on Abdullah. Kasmarin at the time, a guy that's considered to be one of the most powerful individuals in the world. I think the world's strongest man is how he's promoted, and doing the powerlifting thing after the bout, Kasmarin puts Cactus Jack upside down. Bear hug before fighting off Abdullah and putting him in a bear hug as well. Moments later, enhancement wrestlers do come out to break up the fight between everybody involved. I mean, the basic deal here is to get Kasmarin to be at a place where he can put over his own power. Axel Rotten up next, and Joey Maggs. Axel Rotten from the Baltimore area, as is Joey Maggs. So maybe they, who knows, could have broken kayfabe, traveled together, who knows there. But anyway, Abdullah, as mentioned in the Kasmarin match, just kind of there. Axel Rotten manages to punch, kick, and get a very basic run here, managing to be taking a couple shots from Joey Maggs, not exactly shots that have to go anywhere long term, but it's still kind of there. Anyway, missed drop kick by Maggs, and then we see him hit a elbow drop on his adversary. Then we go to another in the series of the Freebirds coming out and managing to do masks. I believe they've been barred from competing for the last little while due to a loss in previous times. Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko are their opponents for the moment. WCW Tag Team Champions Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko defeating Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin wearing black masks as they're billed as the Screaming Eagles from Liverpool, England. 7:52, Zbyszko pins Garvin when Anderson hits Garvin in the face with one of the title belts. Garvin had Zbyszko covered following the DDT. So the Freebirds and Anderson-Zbyszko feud must continue. This match worth going out of your way to see. Brawling on the floor between the Freebirds and Zbyszko and Anderson. I mean, Anderson in the ring gets tossed out by Jimmy Garvin. Michael Hayes, obviously the leader of the team and from the original Freebirds there. Zbyszko keeps things going down back in his general direction, tries to stomp on Michael P.S. Hayes, tries to get a leg work, and again, Garvin comes in, or actually Hayes comes in. Zbyszko spends the majority of the match working over the leg of his adversary, and again, we kind of go in a positive direction. The attempted roll-up after the DDT leads to the use of the championship belt and the victory for the heels here. We'll be back with more right after this.